So we're going to talk about some different devices. For this purpose, for this class, we're not going to be recommending or not recommending. We are going to share some of the ELD units that we actually like, that we're going to give you some feedback on what our customers are saying, we're hearing. By no means have we tested every single ELD system out there. We haven't done that. These are the ones that we hear the most about. These are the ones our customers are using the most, and we'll just be honest with you on what our opinion is. Just keep in mind, this is just our opinion, and we're not knocking anybody or, promoting anybody. We don't get any money. We don't get kickbacks. We don't get anything for, sharing this information. So we're just trying to be honest and help you and guide you figure out, if you haven't got them installed yet, which services or which ELD systems that we like the best and which ones we hear the best things about. But don't just take our word for it. So there's a couple different kinds of units. You can get dedicated, what we call dedicated devices. These are where it's kind of hardwired into your truck. They stay in the unit. They don't go from driver to driver. They stay in that particular truck, and then different drivers can log on. One of those is Omnitrax, and then there's PeopleNet. There are probably some other systems that are, dedicated devices, but these are the most familiar ones that we work with. These devices are pretty costly. Typically, what I'm seeing, they're anywhere between $800 and $1,200 per truck. Plus, then you also have the monthly fees. So these are kind of the upper end. Most of the times, companies you see using these are long haul drivers. Long haul drivers. We don't see a whole lot of companies that switch trucks and drivers all the time using these. But totally up to you. However you want to do it. Dedicated devices, and then we also have plug-and-plays. So plug-and-plays are, they can use their phone or a tablet, just depending on the system that you have. But some of the ones that we're going to be talking about here is Keep Truckin', Samsara, XRS, and Geotab. These are kind of at least my top 4 picks. So Chrissy, I don't know if you have any other ones that you feel like are your kind of top 4s, but these are mine. Do you have any feedback on some that maybe I didn't mention that you really, really like?
I originally learned ELDs off of Omnitrax and the SRS. I thought it was an amazing system. They worked with it. I think it really has to do a lot with what your business needs are, because all of these are going to offer different things. Just like you were discussing with the dedicated actual units themselves. Those are fantastic for long over the road haul. I mean, those guys are not switching trucks, usually same driver, same truck. The only disadvantage is you actually have to physically mount those in the dash. So for some of the older models that don't have the dedicated spot in the dash, you're actually going to have to go through and modify and cut apart your dash. The plug and plays are amazing because you actually just plug your either 6 or 9 pin harness down right underneath the dash. It's very easy to install. Run a quick cord up behind your dash or under your dash, and then it has a small relay. So those ones are pretty nice, especially when you're leasing trucks, when you're going to be switching trucks, because they can be easily removed and then added to a new truck. Most of these vendors, different suppliers of the of the ELDs are going to make it where you can switch those if you're leasing a truck on a temporary basis. Because again, keep in mind, even if it's a leased truck, if you're mandated to do logbooks after the 8 days out of the 30-day cycle, even in that leased truck, you have to have an ELD. So the plug and plays are a nice advantage for those types of people and those businesses that are operating, switching drivers, switching trucks, whatever it may be. But if you have a stationary unit, stationary truck, it's a dedicated route, maybe from New York to Seattle, the permanently mounted ones most motor carriers like. So it just depends on your business operation and your business needs.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree on that. Okay, so let's get right into the different features of different ones. And like I said, the 4 that we're mainly going to talk about all kind of have different features, different things. Some are included in the pricing, some are not. But performance monitoring, that's one of the things I really like about some of these units, and I think it's really underutilized. I think a lot of companies are paying for performance monitoring. Some are paying extra to have performance monitoring, but then they're not even using it. And I think there's some key things that you could use performance monitoring for. So one of those, driver behavior is accountable for 20% of excess fuel consumption. Start monitoring what the fuel consumption is. Also, that fuel consumption can can kind of flag mechanics on the mechanic side to say, why was this truck using, being at a 4.6 miles per gallon, 2 weeks ago, and now all of a sudden it's down to 3 miles per gallon average use. Or maybe it was at 6 gallons or 10 gallons, and now all of a sudden it's at 4. There might be something wrong with the motor that instead of waiting for that motor to blow up or some major catastrophe to happen that's going to cost you $20,000 or $30,000 to repair, if you pay attention to this data, it's going to save you a lot of money, not just in fuel consumption, but it's also going to save you a lot of money in maintenance repairs. You can use the data to coach and reward drivers. You can use, the performance monitoring to quickly identify the best and the worst performers of your fleet, not just with drivers as far as, which ones are doing the best job as far as not speeding, not doing certain things, hard braking, whatever, but your vehicles as well. When used properly, your fuel savings typically can range from 4 to 8%. So I think that's pretty fantastic. I don't know anybody that would not want to save 4 to 8% on their fuel costs. So Chrissy, what are some of the things on fuel, on performance monitoring that maybe I didn't touch on?
I agree with you. I think it is a very powerful tool, and a lot of carriers that I've met with aren't really utilizing it if they have it out there. There is a couple things I would keep in mind when it comes to the topic of the performance monitoring. Right off the top, talking about the driver behavior, controlling that. Absolutely. They are the ones who, if they're gunning it right off the line every time, those guys are going to go through more fuel than the next guy. And you can start to see those trends based off the consumption. As far as when it comes to coaching and rewarding your drivers, this is where I kind of tend to worry about a lot more my motor carriers. Because if they're seeing, say John Doe's getting 5 to 10 heartbreaking events a week, and they're never utilizing that as a coaching tool, well, maybe John Doe's going to go to New York City or Chicago and rear end somebody. Well, you as a motor carrier already have prior knowledge. This driver either is distracted and not paying attention, he's following too close, possibly speeding, and you're choosing to ignore that. So this will go back to building your paper trail to protect yourself. Keep that in mind. It's a huge thing that people do not think about, especially in worst case scenarios of major litigation. This is a tool for you to see how your drivers are actually performing on the road, not just for fuel consumption. But hard braking is a big issue that could have multiple root causes, and you as a motor carrier need to be proactive on that.
I totally agree. Can't agree with you more on that.
Oh yeah, and then one other thing, as you were talking about mechanical issues, a lot of these will have diagnostic codes that will send to you. So we ran into, when I was working for a very, very large fleet that ran all across the country, we would, especially on our Cummins, our ISXs, we would get notifications with fault codes. So when those fault codes could come in, we could look them up and see if it was something where we had the ability to continue running that truck and wait till after they offloaded or loaded to send them into the shop, or if it was something where we needed to stop that truck as soon as possible, get it in the shop and get another truck out to grab their load. So there is very, very valuable tools you can get from your performance monitoring. But again, if you have it and you're not paying attention to it, it can get you in some trouble down the road.
Yeah, exactly. So for those of you watching, if you do have performance, I should say this, if you have the option of doing performance monitoring and that's an extra additional cost and you already know you're not going to pay attention to it, then don't buy it. It's just like a safety policy. You're better off not having one at all than having one you don't follow. So if you're not going to use the performance monitoring and actually pay attention to it and do something with it, and like Chrissy said, do those corrective actions with the drivers whenever they're doing stuff that's not appropriate, I suppose, then turn it off. Just don't pay extra for that part of the ELDs. Now, like I said, some ELD systems it's just included, and then some it's not included. So whatever your situation may be, just be aware that that's a problem, or can potentially lead to a problem. All right, so let's talk about, this is an XRS system. This is Omnitrax. I will say, Chrissy, because you and I had some conversations about this before. So when XRS first was purchased. I don't know how it all worked out, but basically, from what I understand, XRS was purchased from Omnitrax. And this is quite a few years ago now, but it was horrible. I mean, it was horrible. Whenever you told me that this was one of your top picks, I was a little shocked. And it's been a while since you said that now, but because in the beginning, whenever it was horrible. It was glitchy. Any customer I had or ever had to deal with it was horrible. I didn't like it. But you say that since Omnitrax has taken it over, this is one of your favorite ones, right?
Absolutely. I was actually one of, well, the company that I was with then, we were one of the first motor carriers to purchase the XRS and put it in our truck. We were a smaller fleet. We only had about 30 trucks. And we noticed all kinds of issues. But what I loved about Omnitrax and XRS, their tech support is phenomenal. You always get 24/7 tech support. It's quick response. You're not waiting on hold. And as we were coming up with these issues and we were finding these flaws in the system, within a week or two, they would have a whole team on it to resolve it, and they'd send out new updates. So usually when you notify them of an ongoing issue, they worked really, really good with you to resolve it. And then after a couple updates, we weren't having the problems anymore. It was very user-friendly for our drivers and for our admin. So I favor XRS still to this day. I don't have as many clients on it as I would like to, but because of how they work through those glitches so quickly and so efficiently, I don't really feel they have many of them anymore. There's been tons of different distributors that I've worked with that you notify them of glitches, you have problems, you'll sit on tech support for an hour waiting to get somebody on the line. Then once you do, they have no idea what they're talking about, so they just give you a random case number and you just continue to have the same problem. So I appreciate Omnitrax, both with their MCP 50 and their XRS, that they can go through and they'll help you identify those issues. If the person you're on the phone doesn't know how to do it, they're going to send you up to the next person that can help you resolve it. So that's why I favor them.
Got it. I always found that with Omnitrax is one of the dedicated units. The MCP 50 is one of those dedicated units, and they are pretty expensive for each truck, but they always have had good customer service. As far as I have experienced, the customer service has always been very good with Omnitrax. So so I'm really glad to hear that the XRS system is doing really well.